It's strange, and maybe even a little unsettling, to think back on those days when I still felt like a woman. I don't even know when it happened, when we stopped talking, when we stopped noticing each other. But it was so gradual, so subtle, that I didn't even realize how much we were drifting apart until it was too late. I just got used to it. Our life became a series of routines: work, home, dinner, sleep, repeat. How many years went by? I honestly can't remember the last time we had a real conversation, the kind where you just talk for hours and feel like you're connecting, truly connecting. It was all so silent. Dane, my husband, was always busy. Always. He'd leave the house early and get back late, often too exhausted to even say much. He was successful, a high-powered businessman who had built himself up from nothing. I knew he was doing this for us, for our future. I didn't hold it against him. But after a while, I started to realize how little he noticed me anymore. We'd sit down for dinner, sometimes in silence, sometimes exchanging a few sentences about our day. He'd be on his phone, checking emails or texts, while I would look at the empty plate in front of me, wondering how it all went so wrong. I was grateful for what he provided, sure. We had a beautiful house, nice vacations every year, and everything we needed. On paper, everything looked perfect. But no one told me that success in your career doesn't always translate to success in your marriage. No one told me that it's easy to get lost in the hustle of life and forget what really matters. And over time, it felt like I was just a shadow in his life. A wife he saw out of obligation, not desire. I didn't blame him. I didn't even try to. He didn't mean to ignore me. He was just busy. And I was just here. I often tried to get his attention, to talk about something, anything. But I could see the distraction in his eyes. He was somewhere else, mentally, and the worst part was that I couldn't seem to pull him back to me. It felt like we were living parallel lives under one roof, strangers who just happened to share a bed and eat at the same table. It was on one of those quiet evenings when it really hit me. I was sitting at the kitchen table, waiting for him to come home. The clock ticked slowly, and I scrolled mindlessly through my phone. It had been a long day at work, but nothing felt fulfilling anymore. I felt empty, restless. As I looked at the half-finished glass of wine in front of me, I realized that I was lonely. I was so lonely. Even with him in the next room, even when he kissed me goodnight, there was this void I couldn't fill. This aching loneliness I couldn't escape. And I didn't know how to fix it. How do you fix something when the person you're with doesn't even know it's broken? That's when I met him again. I was at a party, one of those casual work gatherings that Dane had been invited to, but he couldn't make it because of a meeting. I wasn't too upset about it. I never really liked these things, but I went out of a sense of obligation. It wasn't a big deal, I told myself. But when I walked into the venue, I saw him standing there, looking the same as I remembered. Andrew, my old friend from college. It had been years since we'd last spoken, but seeing him brought back so many memories. He had that easy charm, that smile that made you feel like the most important person in the room. And he hadn't changed a bit. Well, if it isn't Sarah, he said, grinning. I can't believe it's been so long. We fell into conversation easily, like we'd never been apart. We talked about the good old days. College, our mutual friends, all the things that felt so far removed from the person I had become. It felt good, like I was reconnecting with a part of myself that I hadn't realized I missed. I remember laughing more that night than I had in months. He listened to me, really listened, and I felt heard. I felt seen. And it felt amazing. We talked for hours. The party eventually broke up, but neither of us seemed ready to go home. He invited me for a drink at a nearby bar, and I agreed. For the first time in so long, I felt alive. I wasn't just his wife, stuck in a quiet house, waiting for him to notice her. I was me. I was someone who mattered. Andrew didn't make me feel like I was just filling a role, like Dane did. He didn't look at me with that same tired, distant gaze. He looked at me like he wanted to be there, like I was interesting, like I was worth his time. I hadn't felt that in so long. We talked about our lives, what had changed. I told him about the emptiness I'd been feeling, about how things with Dane had become so routine, so distant. He didn't judge me, he just listened. And I told him everything, the way I felt like I was invisible in my own life. The way Dane never seemed to care. The way I just wanted someone to notice me again. That sounds tough. Andrew said quietly, his voice a little softer. But you're still here, right? Still you. You deserve someone who sees that. I didn't know what to say to that. I didn't want to admit to myself what I was starting to feel. but it was impossible to ignore the warmth I felt every time he smiled at me, the way his eyes never left mine when he spoke. It was so different from the blank stares I'd been getting at home. I told myself I was just catching up with an old friend. Nothing more. But deep down, I knew. I knew that for the first time in a long time, I felt seen, and it felt good. So good. I didn't know where it would lead, or if it would lead anywhere at all. But in that moment, I didn't care. I was tired of being invisible. And maybe, just maybe, I was willing to see where this could go. The first time Andrew texted me, my heart skipped a beat. I didn't even realize how much I missed the sound of my phone buzzing with a message until his name appeared on the screen. It wasn't just any text. It was a question about how I was doing. Nothing too out of the ordinary, but it felt like a lifeline. I hadn't felt that sense of being wanted, of being noticed, in so long. I didn't respond immediately. I hesitated for a moment, debating whether it was right to even reply. Was I betraying Dane by acknowledging another man's attention? I knew it wasn't fair to him, but I also knew that I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine. In a weird way, it felt like a secret I could finally share with myself, something that had been buried inside me for so long. But I did respond, and it was the start of everything unraveling. Andrew and I began texting more often after that. At first, it was just small talk, catching up on the usual things: work, mutual friends, random memories from college. But soon, the messages grew more personal, more flirty. I'd find myself waiting for his texts, checking my phone obsessively. It was the first time in ages that someone was genuinely interested in my life, in me as a person. The words weren't just polite, they were playful. They were warm. They were validating. I kept telling myself that it was harmless. It wasn't like we were doing anything wrong, right? We were just talking. Just catching up. I was still married. I still loved Dane, or at least I convinced myself I did. But it was becoming harder to ignore how good it felt to be seen again. A week after our first conversation, Andrew invited me to meet up. Just for coffee, he said. No strings, I promise. I should have said no. I knew I should have. But that little voice inside me, the one that had been ignored for so long, whispered that maybe, just maybe, this was the spark I needed. Maybe I could find a piece of myself again in this quiet, stolen moment. I agreed, and just like that, it started. We met at a small cafe downtown. The kind of place where the baristas knew everyone by name, and the coffee tasted like it had been brewed with care. We sat at a corner table, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. He looked at me like I was the only person in the room. And I loved it. I could feel the weight of his gaze on me, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt desirable. How's everything going? He asked, leaning forward slightly. How's your husband? You guys doing okay? The question seemed innocent, but something about it made my chest tighten. I knew he was asking out of concern, but I also knew it was an opening. I could either shut it down and keep the walls up, or I could let it slip a little. And, in that moment, I chose to let it slip. We're fine, I said quickly. But then, without thinking, I added, it's just, I don't know, we've been so busy. Dane's always working. I'm always here waiting for him. It's like we're roommates now, not what we used to be. Andrew nodded, his eyes softening. I get it. I really do. He paused for a moment, and then his smile returned, warm and inviting. You deserve someone who appreciates you, Sarah. His words hit me harder than I expected. I tried to laugh it off, but it felt real, like he actually meant it. We spent the next hour talking about everything and nothing, just enjoying the simple pleasure of being in each other's company. I didn't even realize how much time had passed until the cafe started closing. When I stood up to leave, Andrew reached out and touched my arm gently. I'm glad we did this, he said, his fingers lingering on my skin for a moment longer than necessary. Let's do it again sometime. And I wanted to. I wanted to say yes, to feel that warmth again, to be with someone who saw me, really saw me. I didn't say it out loud, but I knew I would be back. The next few weeks were a blur of texts, calls, and more meetings. We met for lunch when we could, sometimes just for a walk in the park. At first, everything felt innocent. I would tell myself, it's just coffee, it's just a lunch, it's not like anything's happening. But slowly, I started to crave more. The attention he gave me wasn't just comforting anymore. It was addictive. With every meeting, I felt like I was becoming more alive, more seen. And little by little, the line between what was acceptable and what wasn't blurred. I began to look forward to his messages. I would sit by the window, waiting for my phone to buzz, and when it did, my heart would flutter. The texts were always light, teasing, but I could feel the undercurrent of something deeper. He'd tell me I looked beautiful, even in my most casual clothes. He'd compliment my laugh, my smile. And every compliment felt like a balm to the wounds I didn't even know I had. One evening, after a few drinks at a bar, things shifted. We were sitting close, laughing, and it was like the world had shrunk down to just the two of us. His hand brushed against mine, and I felt a jolt of electricity run through me. For a moment, I froze, but then I let myself relax into it. I let the tension I didn't even know I had go. Without thinking, I leaned in, and we kissed. It wasn't rushed or desperate, but it was hungry. It was like we'd both been starving for something we hadn't realized we needed. When the kiss ended, I pulled back, heart racing. My mind screamed at me to stop, to walk away, to end it before it went any further. But I didn't. I stayed. I kissed him again. I couldn't help myself. In that moment, it felt like everything I'd been missing had been handed to me on a silver platter. I wasn't a wife. I wasn't someone's dutiful partner. I was me. I was a woman who mattered. A woman who was wanted. And I wasn't ready to let that go. When we parted that night, I told myself it was just a moment. That it was just one kiss. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. I was already too far gone. I knew this day would come. Somehow I had always known. It wasn't that I was looking for a sign or a way out, but deep down, I could feel it. Like an impending storm that you don't want to acknowledge, but you can feel in your bones. I wasn't expecting it to happen this way, though. I wasn't prepared for the shock of it all. It was late in the evening, and I was at home. Dane had been out of town on business, and I'd spent the day doing my usual routine. Watching TV, scrolling through social media, pretending to be okay. My phone buzzed, and it was a message from him. At first, I thought it was just a check-in from his trip, but when I opened it, my heart stopped. It wasn't just a simple text. It was a link to a video. I clicked it, and the screen loaded. The moment I saw what was playing, my stomach dropped. It was me, sitting at a bar laughing, talking to Andrew. Then, the video shifted. We were kissing. The camera had captured the exact moment when we'd crossed that line. My face was in the frame, flushed, my lips pressed against Andrew's in a way that was so intimate, so wrong. For a moment I couldn't breathe. I froze, staring at the screen, the reality of what I had done hitting me all at once. It wasn't just a kiss. It was everything. Every lie, every secret, every stolen moment. It was all there, in that one video. I sat there, numb. The message from Dane was simple: we need to talk. But the words felt like a punch to the gut. I knew what he must have been feeling: betrayed, disgusted, confused. And in that moment, I hated myself. I wanted to crawl into a hole and disappear. But I didn't know what to do. I couldn't hide. I couldn't lie. I had to face him. When he got home, I was already sitting on the couch, my hands trembling. I didn't know if he had watched the entire video or if he had just seen the part with the kiss. Either way, I could feel the tension in the air when he walked in. He stood by the door for a moment, just looking at me. His eyes were full of hurt, disbelief, and anger. I could see it all in his face, and I felt a wave of guilt so overwhelming that it almost choked me. "How could you?" he asked, his voice low but laced with fury. "I trusted you, Sarah. I trusted you." I opened my mouth to speak, but the words wouldn't come. How could I explain what I had done? How could I explain that, while I was standing there, kissing Andrew, I was still thinking about him, about Dane, about our marriage? How could I tell him that, even as I made this choice, I was still here, still his wife, even though everything in me felt so lost? "I didn't want to hurt you," I finally whispered, my voice barely above a whisper. "But you didn't see me, Dane. You didn't see how lonely I was. I tried so hard to make it work. I tried to get your attention, but you were always too busy. You were always working, always somewhere else, and I needed someone to see me. I needed someone to tell me that I was more than just your wife, that I was me." His expression twisted with a mix of disbelief and pain. "So, this is your answer? You go and kiss another man? You betray me like this? How long has this been going on?" I didn't want to tell him the truth. I didn't want him to know how deep I had fallen into this. I didn't want him to know how I had justified it in my head, how it wasn't about Andrew, not really. It was about me. About the hole I felt inside, the desperate need for attention and affection. It was easier to blame Dane, to blame the fact that he was too busy to notice, than to face the truth that I had made this choice. I had crossed that line willingly. I don't know what to say," I said, my voice breaking. I didn't mean for this to happen. It just did. Dane's face grew harder, the hurt mixing with rage. No, you chose this. Don't you dare try to make it sound like it was some kind of accident. You knew exactly what you were doing. I nodded, tears streaming down my face. I know. And I'm sorry. I am sorry, Dane. But you need to understand, you didn't see me anymore. I didn't exist in your world. All I wanted was to feel like I mattered. There was a long silence. He stood there, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. I could see the conflict inside him, the way his emotions warred with each other. I could tell he was trying to decide what to do next, whether to walk away or confront me head-on. But his next words cut through me like a knife. How long, Sarah? How long has this been going on? How long have you been lying to me? I couldn't look him in the eye. A few weeks? I whispered. It started with just talking, and then it became more. But I swear I didn't want to hurt you. I never meant for things to go this far. I could see the pain in his eyes, the hurt from all the years of neglect I had allowed myself to ignore. He had always been so focused on his work, so consumed by his career that he had stopped seeing me, stopped being present in our relationship. But I knew that was no excuse for what I had done. I couldn't blame him for my choices. I had made them. I never stopped loving you, I said quietly, my voice cracking. But I needed to feel, I needed someone to see me. And I didn't know how to fix it, so I just let myself fall into something else. He turned away, his face pale. You have no idea what you've done, do you? Do you have any idea how much you've destroyed? You've shattered my trust, Sarah. And I don't know how to fix that. I don't know if I even want to try. I wanted to scream, to apologize 1,000 times, to beg him to forgive me. But I didn't. All I could do was sit there, knowing that nothing I said could undo the damage I had caused. And deep down, I knew that even though I still loved him, I had already destroyed something inside us. Something that could never be fixed. I didn't know what would happen next, but I knew one thing for sure: everything had changed. Forever. The silence between us was unbearable. The house, once filled with the sounds of us living our life together, now felt like a tomb. I had betrayed him, shattered the trust we had built for years, and I could feel the weight of it pressing on me every single moment. I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't even know if it could be fixed. But I had to try. I owed him that much. I spent the next few days in a fog, replaying everything in my head over and over again, asking myself what I had been thinking, why I hadn't stopped before it had gone so far. It wasn't like I didn't love Dane. I did. I always had. But somewhere, in the quiet desperation of my loneliness, I lost sight of everything. I let myself get swept up in something that was never supposed to be. The guilt was suffocating. Every time I saw him, I saw the hurt in his eyes. Every word we exchanged felt like a reminder of what I had done. I knew I couldn't undo the past, but I had to make him understand. I had to make him see that it wasn't about loving Andrew. It was about me failing to face the issues in my own heart. I had allowed myself to believe that I could fix the emptiness with someone else, but now I was left with nothing but regret and this aching hole in my chest. One evening, after another long and painful silence between us, I sat down with him in the living room. He was reading the news on his tablet, trying to escape into something, anything. His posture was stiff, as though he was bracing for something he knew would come, but didn't want to face. I need to talk to you, I said, my voice trembling. He didn't look up, but I could see the tension in his jaw. I'm listening, he replied quietly, but I could hear the exhaustion in his voice. I took a deep breath, fighting back the tears that had been threatening to spill all day. I've been thinking about everything, Dane. About what happened. About us. I paused, trying to find the right words, but there were none. I couldn't fix what was broken. I could only try to explain why I'd made the choices I did, even if I wasn't sure I fully understood them myself. I don't even know where to begin. I continued, but the truth is, I was weak. I was hurting, and I was too scared to admit it. I thought that I could find something outside of our marriage. Something that would make me feel alive again. But what I did, what I allowed myself to do, was a mistake. I betrayed you, and I hate myself for it. But please understand, it wasn't because I stopped loving you. I never stopped loving you. It was because I didn't know how to fix what was broken inside me. I needed attention, validation, something to fill that void. And instead of coming to you and saying it, I chose the wrong path. I could barely look at him. Every word felt like another weight added to the pile of regret I was carrying. But I had to keep going, Because I needed him to understand how much I regretted it all, how much I had taken him for granted. I didn't know how to reach you anymore, I said, my voice breaking. You were always working, always somewhere else. I felt invisible. And instead of telling you, instead of reaching out to you, I went down this path. And now I've destroyed everything. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I need you to know that it wasn't because I wanted to hurt you. It was because I was lost. He was silent for a long time. The silence was deafening, and my heart thudded painfully in my chest. I could see him processing everything I said, trying to make sense of it, but I also saw the walls he was building up around himself. I could see the hurt in his eyes, the distance creeping in. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he put his tablet down and met my gaze. His eyes were red-rimmed, tired. I don't know what to say, Sarah. I want to believe you, I really do. But the truth is, what you did, it cuts deep. I can't just forget it. I can't just erase it from my mind. I swallowed hard, feeling a lump in my throat. I wasn't asking for him to forget. I wasn't asking him to act like nothing had happened. I just needed him to understand. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, I said softly. I don't expect things to go back to normal just because I'm sorry. I know that trust doesn't come back overnight. But I want to try, Dane. I want to do whatever it takes to fix this. I know I can't fix it all, but I'm willing to work. I don't want to lose you. I don't want to lose us. There was another long silence. I could see him wrestling with his emotions, with everything that had been shattered between us. He looked away, rubbing his temples, like he was trying to clear his head. I don't know if I can ever look at you the same way, he said quietly. I don't know if I can ever trust you again. You destroyed that trust. You made a choice, and I don't know if I can move past that. I nodded, tears streaming down my face. I didn't blame him. I didn't expect him to have all the answers. He was just as lost as I was, and I had put him in this impossible situation. But I'm willing to try, he said, his voice raw. I don't know if I can forgive you right now, or ever, but if you're willing to put in the work, if you're really committed to fixing this, then I'll try too. I don't know what it's going to look like, but we'll see. We'll see if we can rebuild something out of this mess. His words didn't bring relief. They didn't erase the guilt I felt, but they gave me a sliver of hope. Maybe, just maybe, we could find a way forward. But the truth is, even as I sat there, trying to hold on to the possibility of forgiveness, I knew something had changed. Something irreparable. The trust we had once shared had been shattered, and even if we tried to rebuild it, it would never be the same. I didn't know what the future held for us. I didn't know if we could survive this, or if we even should. But for the first time in a long time, I was willing to try. And that, I guess, was the only place to start.